Minister, I just think it's an opportune moment to actually ask you to clarify what actually is the position with the funding status of the Rebuilding Ireland Home Loan Scheme, particularly in light of the additional information that I received through Freedom of Information, that the Department knew as of last September that there were issues with monitoring. Could you tell me, is the scheme still frozen? Because there's a number of local authorities telling applicants that they cannot process the application and not issue the loans because they have been told that the money is expended and they haven't been given their new allocation. So if you could clarify what the position is, please.
Deputy. Minister.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Deputy, for the question. The Rebuilding Ireland Home Loan was launched on the 1st of February of last year to replace the existing house purchase and home choice loan schemes, providing a new line of mortgage finance, including fixed rates over 25 to 30 years, to credit-worthy first-time buyers who cannot access sufficient mortgage finance from a commercial lender. The Housing Finance Agency borrowed €200 million to fund the scheme, and it was estimated that the drawdown would be approximately €200 million over the 3 years. Some criticism at the time was that insufficient loans were being approved and drawn down. However, as Minister, I had made a commitment to seek further funding at an early stage, if necessary, given my belief in the scheme's potential. The scheme has been more successful than anticipated, and by the end of January, €106 million had been drawn down, accounting for 53% of the available funding, at a point at which €66 million would have been more consistent with the expectation of a 3-year drawdown period. By the end of March of this year, drawdowns have reached €127 million. My officials kept me informed regarding progress on the loan on a regular basis and have been engaging with the Department of Public Expenditure and Reform since October of last year, when higher lending and drawdown volumes were beginning to materialise. I informed the Dáil on the 29th of January of this year of the scheme's success and on the need for additional funding, and further indicated that my department was in discussions with the Departments of Public Expenditure and Reform and Finance with regard to the allocations for 2019. Local authorities could continue to accept applications as the total funding had not been drawn down, and a meeting with the Minister for Finance and Public Expenditure and Reform took place on the 5th of March of this year. Ongoing discussions between the three departments have included consultation with the Central Bank as recently as last Friday, the 5th of April. When these discussions have concluded, I'll be in a position to confirm the level of allocation for 2019. In the meantime, the scheme remains open, it is not frozen, and all local authorities have been advised to continue to receive and process applications. Thank you.
I don't know where I start there. Receive and process applications is one thing, but issue loan offers is another. And our local authorities, many of them actually not allowing the drawdown of those funds. Like I'm sure you've heard, Minister, over the last number of days, a number of testimonies from individuals across the country, from South Dublin to Waterford, in a number of local authorities that actually haven't been able to get the funds. So whilst you say the scheme is open and is accepting applications, they may be processing them up to a point of the issuing of the loan offer. They're not processing them any further. And that is the issue of anyone who's actually made an offer on a house at the moment. In many instances across this country, they can't draw down the loan. So what actually is the position? You can say it's open, but they're not concluding the processing of the application. So I want to, maybe if you could inform the House of when a new round of funding will be confirmed by the Department of Finance. So when will we know that additional funds have been allocated? And I would say, Minister, last September, by the way, your department were still noting the fact that the take-up was actually slow. So the monitoring was a big problem between HFA and your department.
Thanks,
but if we just need to give clarity to those out there who are depending on this Rebuilding Ireland loan to be able to purchase their homes.
Thanks, Deputy. Minister to respond.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the follow-up question, Deputy. First of all, and as I confirmed to you in the recent meeting of the Joint Oireachtas Committee, all approvals that have been given to date by the credit committees and local authorities, all approvals will be honoured, and there should be no hesitation or pause on facilitating the drawdown of those loans where there has been an approval made by the credit committee. Only €127 million has been drawn down of the €200 million, and in fact, if you drill into that, only €85 million has actually been drawn down by the local authorities from the Housing Finance Agency itself. So there is more than enough funding in the scheme at present to honour the approvals that have been put there for drawdowns as well. In relation to allocations for this year, the money is there for drawdown and more money will be made available. So local authorities don't need to wait for their allocations for 2019. We will honour any approval that is given by a credit committee at a local authority area, and they can continue to do that. And where we find instances, for example, there was one today on the radio where that isn't happening, we get in touch with the local authority to ask why not. So I am very sorry for the confusion that is there in some local authority areas. The confusion is not because of anything the Department of Housing is doing or the Housing Finance Agency, and where there are difficulties, we will work to address them.
Deputy. Thanks, Minister.
Yeah, I very much welcome that clarification. I think that's really important, and I genuinely welcome that. And I think the message that you're giving in response to the questions that I'm asking on behalf of Fianna Fáil is that any of the loans that are approved right now, that there should be no impediment on those loans being drawn down or those mortgages being drawn down. So could I ask you, Minister, further that your department will actually issue a written directive to the local authorities, those like South Dublin and Waterford, who are right now saying, and South Dublin haven't actually issued or haven't permitted a drawdown of a mortgage since December last, that why is that the situation? I genuinely welcome your clarification, and that is important, and there is confusion. Confusion not brought about by this side of the House, I might add. But I would say to you that let's get those loans that are approved, those who are, drawn down should they need it, and I would ask you to continue to update the House and maybe give us some time frame as to when you see additional funds being allocated and when the 2019 allocations will be made. Because people right now are making loan applications and are not sure whether they're ever going to be able to get to the stage of drawdown. Okay. We need to clear this up Deputy. Once and for all.
Thank you, Deputy. Minister.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Deputy, for the follow-up question. Like you and like any other Deputy in this House, it makes me very angry when I hear of a couple or an individual who are trying to buy a home, have been given approval for this mortgage, and then aren't able to draw it down and potentially not then complete the sale that they've entered into, where they've gone sale agreed with someone selling a home. So this is why I think it's very important to clarify, and thank you for the opportunity, that any credit committee that's made an approval for a loan, that loan is to be honoured and the drawdown is to be facilitated by that local authority. And we're not to be getting in the way of those people buying their homes because we have approved a mortgage in that regard. I did issue a circular to local authorities recently clarifying that the scheme is still open and they are still to continue to process applications. In relation to the funding allocations for 2019, again, there is more than sufficient funding there present for local authorities to be able to draw down from the Housing Finance Agency, so they can continue to access that money and lend it out. In relation to the discussions between myself and the Minister for Finance, they are ongoing, but a decision is imminent, and I hope to be in a position to make an allocation for 2019 very shortly.